are being recorded.
Righty, welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. Darren Mitchell here, and every now and then I get the wonderful privilege of interviewing some great people, and today is by no means an exception. So, John Dean, Sales Director Central, founder and mentor at Sales Director Central. Great to have you on board for this conversation today, JD.
Yeah, there you go. You've done it already.
Well, I've got to let people know it's John Dean, better referred to as JD. So from now on, it's JD.
Perfect.
Welcome, JD.
Perfect. Thanks, Darren. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, mate. And we've been talking a little bit about lots of things, all sales and sales leader related. But I want to delve in first of all, just for our listeners. There was a post on on LinkedIn this morning that you put on, which has gathered a bit of traction and potentially it could go viral. We were talking about sales leaders and how do I say this? You said you were a crap sales manager when you first started. So can we start there? Bad. Because look, I love talking to sales leaders and what I consider to be exceptional sales leaders, and I'd put you in that category. But one of the things that I've found with you, knowing you for a little while now, is that you're not afraid to say that, you know what, I'm not perfect. In fact, anything but. So let's start with that. Let's go way back to when you thought you were a crap sales manager. What was it about that, and what happened? What led you to that belief?
I think you talk, Amanda. I do love listening to your podcast as well, mate. There's a book by Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and one of the dysfunctions is being vulnerable in a safe environment.
Yeah,
I'm a big believer in not being 10 foot high and bulletproof, but talking a little bit. And I was a bit challenged, I got to say, with the post of I was a crap sales leader, but it was so true. I mean, I was such a crap sales leader. My co-founder in the business, he talks about, and I love the way he phrases it. Most, if you go and take your best performing sales rep out and make them a sales leader, you've actually got 2 problems. That was my bit. He said, as a sales contributor, you're selfish. You're trying to get all your resources and effort of your organization focused in and getting a client across the line. As a sales leader, you're selfless. Because it's all about your team and how to do it. And it kind of comes in. One of the things that we talk about is if you take your best performing rep and make them a leader, you've got 2 problems. You've lost the revenue, and you've got a very new. I normally say an idiot for a boss.
That's right.
And I was coming back to your question. I was completely that. And the things I talked about in the post, I was 100% mini-me. So if I was hiring someone, you needed to look, act, and feel like I did and sell the way I did. I micromanaged. I managed everything. And again, the way I sold was the way I wanted them to sell somewhat.
Yeah.
So I would say, I was a big, I didn't need to read Alan Pease's book, Body Language, because I just get body language, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I just, elements of it, like, I get that completely. And so I'd say to them, hey, when you did that thing, where did they look? And the reps are going, what do you mean? I'm like, well, were they shocked? Were they, when you're in the office, what was around the office? Was it a busy desk? Were there posters behind the wall? Was it cluttered? Was it graphs? So I was doing all of these things again in the way that I sold. And then the last bit, and I make this point in the post, I KPI'd everything. I KPI'd every input. How many calls are you making? When some of the stuff, and I know you've heard some of the stuff that we've done at Sales Director Central. If you're bad at making 10 cold calls, you're really bad at 100.
Yeah.
So why use that as a driver?
Absolutely.
I've got a client that we've done some work with. Last year, they did over 70 presentations, and it's 2 people in a presentation for no deals.
0.
70 presentations for 0 deals.
So from their KPI perspective, they would have hit and maybe blown their KPIs out of the water in terms of demos.
All the activity, right? All the activity, all the processes, all of the proposals out the door. So they met a whole bunch of inputs of activity-based stuff. I think it's fascinating sitting in sales meetings the way we do, and looking at the amount of activity that gets measured of what we've done, rather than what we should be doing, which is putting a cadence or a framework or rigor around the outputs.
Yeah.
What are the processes? What are the next steps that they have to do in order to get a buying decision? What does procurement look like? What is the all of those things? Why do they have to buy it right now? So it's kind of morphing from one to that. So yeah, to your question, I was really I was good at selling early, and that was just energy and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
An old boss of mine used to talk about playing the piano, and he'd say, sometimes you play the piano and they sing along with you.
Yeah.
And the keyboard and the keyboard, it was kind of hitting the same notes. And what I kind of really realized early-ish on is they only sing along if you understand them really well. And
Yep.
so I kind of discovered some of my discovery super early. And so again, as a leader, how do we get, I was doing 15 demos in a week back in the day. That's a lot.
It is.
And so what that means is, from activity perspective, proposals were more like quotes. There's a whole bunch of stuff that just got, kind of short, not done in the right way that it needed to be. So fortunate enough, I kept getting opportunities to sell and then to manage. And then I don't think it was until I was the general manager, even for the second time, that I was a really good general manager.
Okay.
First time I was more a figurehead and the senior person than an effective leader at trying to do stuff.
So let me ask you this question. Based on that, for the three or the second time you got into like a sales leadership role, was that something that was intentional on your part, or were you given that opportunity almost like a tap on the shoulder based on being a great salesperson?
I think if I go back 30 years ago,
not showing our age by any means.
Yeah, that's right. I think there was just a natural. It still happens today, though, Darren. Right? I'm sure you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, you get, if you can sell okay, then you should be able to manage okay. And it's the same in football, right? There's a lot of really great players who are okay at leading a team, but they really shouldn't probably be the coach or the leader of that group of people. And so I don't think that. So the third time, yes, I had career ambitions for a long time. I really love the guys that recognize, hey, you know what? I don't want a sales leadership position. I love those guys that come to that realization and say, you know what? I don't want to be managing people. I'm no good with it. I'm really good at this bit.
Yep.
I love those because they're the guys that love the conversation with customers. They drive it. They're not trying to be more than they are.
Yeah. They're almost the type of people that you'd love to have in your team as a sales leader. That they don't necessarily have ambition to want your job, right? They're not going to necessarily challenge you for authority, but they're in their sweet spot. But it's so true in what you say, because I've worked with a lot of sales leaders over the journey that have been given the opportunity purely based on their numbers as an individual contributor.
Right.
And the business has said, hey, JD, you're an extraordinary salesperson. Look at these results. We reckon if we could duplicate you, if we could leverage you, imagine if we had 5 or 6 JDs in our organization. So can you take over this team and teach them what you just say, do what you do, right? And many of them come to the realization that, hey, I'm not equipped to this. I'm not equipped for this. I don't want to do this. And this is not my sweet spot. And as you say, 2 problems exist. One is you become a really bad boss and your revenue starts to dip.
Right.
And so sales leadership's not for everybody.
It's not. I remember in my second sales leadership role, and again, the business did really well. And to be fair, I was 90% contributor, 10% leader, really. I mean, ultimately, the bulk of my number was my number. So I remember setting out and doing a 1-day training program because I had 2 new sales guys. And 3 days later, I still had more stuff to go. Like it was that, we need to get a common base of those. And I realized there is sales in my mind is a really simple thing made complex by a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And the complexity, activity stuff, there's a whole bunch of complexity that really doesn't drive meaningful, significant, repeatable results. I was talking to a sales leader yesterday. He's been in the role now 4 or 5 years. He was really nervous. So I do some coaching with him. He's really nervous about becoming a leader for the first time.
Mhm.
So this guy gets it. Like he's probably in my top 10 salespeople I've met, and he's morphed into one of the top 10 leaders I've met. Like he's done a fantastic job. But he said to me yesterday, we were reflecting on the journey he's been on, and he said he was the one that sparked the KPI thing. He said there's so many levers I was pulling 4 years ago, and you just don't need it.
Yeah.
Like you're really unsure where you add value, so you just try and do the scattergun the whole thing rather than saying, hey, I really add value here in this deal at this stage.
Absolutely.
And let's stop doing all the stuff that really is not going to shift the needle.
And I think that's all right. That's a great point, because I reckon there's a challenge for a lot of sales leaders, particularly new ones, that almost don't know what it is they don't know. And look, and we've all got models that we look to and say, well, hey, there goes a great sales leader, or there goes a great example of a person who would like to emulate. But until you actually get into the seat and find out what works and what doesn't work, you don't really know, right? And so from him to be able to realize that is a good realization. But I've also come to realize that sales leaders, executives, companies even love to overcomplicate the overly simplistic, right? And the ones that can do this well, and the ones that develop and deliver sustainable success, are the ones that can take the complex and make it really, really simple, but then replicable. So what are the key levers we have to pull that are non-negotiable, and all the other stuff can be almost noise, but this is what we need to focus on. So yeah, go.
I was going to say, you just reminded me of a quote Paul Roos made back when he was coaching the Swans. Yes, from a Melbourne perspective, back when he was coaching the Swans, and someone asked a question about Adam Goodes early in his career, and the question kind of came in, and I think Goodes had shown some talent quite early. Clearly, dual Brownlow medal is a test that completely. And he said, tell me about where Adam's going to get to in terms of his career. And he turned to the commentator and he said, I want Adam to leave here a better person, not a better player.
Yeah.
And I love that. And again, from a leadership and a growth perspective, I talked to another client of mine this morning, and we're talking about Ted Lasso, the Ted Lasso show, which is all about the gratitude and the giving back. And how do you develop your team, not how to hit your number. Most sales leaders have got a number they can't jump over. And so what they start doing from a leadership perspective is they're in every deal, and they're not micromanaging, but they're taking control of elements of it. Yeah. If you were to actually put a process in place, another colleague of mine says, sometimes you see people, who's a recruiter, he says sometimes he sees people that have been in IT leadership for 20 years. And then his comment was they've had the same year 20 times. And I love that notion of growth in the process, right? Do you think about changing all the processes in your business? Are you thinking about hitting your number? I've got a $10 million target and a crew of people, or are you thinking about how you're going to grow the team so that 10 years you've done the $10 million target, but you've also done next year's $15 million target because the team has improved, has grown, etc. So it's a big topic, but I agree with you completely. There's far too many things. This topic is made complex by far too many people. I mean, really simply, how many clients that you talk to have a problem they can't solve? Rather than how many people are we talking to where we're trying to find a $100,000 solution? If you find $1 million problem, you can do that in every client, man.
Yeah. Absolutely.
100%.
And I love that quote, because, and it's so true. And you look at any successful team, organization, and even, hey, full disclosure, Melbourne supporter, Melbourne member, long-suffering Melbourne member, but 57 years, baby, now a premiership coming home. But if you listen to the leadership team within the Melbourne Footy Club, they're talking very much along the same lines as what Paul Roos was talking. And yes, Paul Roos has obviously brought in Simon Goodman and spent time at the Footy Club. But it's such an important point that if we as sales leaders could focus more on helping the team and the individuals become better people, rather than focusing all of our attention on get the target, get the target, get the target, then a funny thing tends to happen. And I'd be interested in your take on this, that if we can focus on people becoming better versions of themselves, guess what? The target starts to get taken care of.
There's if you reflect back on, I'm an AFL person as well. If you reflect back on most teams, I think the growth of Melbourne as a team is probably commensurate with the growth of the leaders in that club.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think if you go through, the Hawthorns, if you go through the Cats, the Swans when they were, it's all around the ability of the individuals almost to coach themselves on field.
Yeah.
It's knowing when to be the spark, knowing when to drive that next opportunity, whatever that thing is,
Yep.
knowing when to jump in on a sales call, because they steered in a different direction. I think that unfortunately comes with grey hair and experience, but there's a lot of parallels between, I think, success as a team. Sales is a team game. I say this constantly. Sales is a team game. If you think it's all about you and your number, you've got it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely got it wrong.
Yeah.
You've got, even in small businesses, you've got a whole bunch of people looking to make sure that you are as successful as you possibly can be.
And with that, talking about, the evolution of a leader, whether it be a team leader within a footy club or a sales leader within an enterprise or an organization, love your thoughts on the evolution of that person and the amount of failure they might have to embrace and be okay with in order to start to learn those lessons that if they didn't learn those lessons, they wouldn't be able to eventually deliver, I guess, the outcomes that they now deliver.
I think there's a measure of sacrifice from a leadership perspective. The more you're able, the more you're able to sacrifice your ability, your outcomes, the things you're achieving for the betterment of others, the quicker that shift is going to happen.
Yeah.
If I think about the 4 or 5 really, really good sales leaders that I know, and then I think about the 4 or 5 sales leaders that I've worked with, that there's a really common element of the selflessness bit.
Yeah.
The guys that are really good are connected to their teams. They understand what drives them. They know how to motivate and do it, not just yell at them because they've just been yelled at themselves.
Yeah.
They can understand how to best help them because they understand that level. And it's not just, hey, wait on, step back. I need to jump in and do this bit here because you're not going to do it as well. I mean, that's never going to really achieve any long-term success.
No.
Like I said to you before, most sales leaders have a number they can't jump over. And I think one of the challenges is they then get in every deal rather than understanding what are the levers and how do I pull this and how do I sacrifice my ability. I would rather a rep fail and learn than succeed and not learn.
Absolutely.
A million times over.
Absolutely. And there's probably people listening to this right now thinking, well, hang on a second, you don't understand that my company, we need to hit a target, because if we don't hit a target, we're in all sorts, right? But it's the leaders who have the self-awareness to the point where we need to learn lessons, and it's only through those lessons can we actually get better. Because the point you make is a really valid one, that if as a sales leader, and I made the same mistake, I used to get involved in as many deals as I possibly could because hey, I loved being center of attention. I loved to be like the allure of getting that big deal was just phenomenal. What I didn't realize at the time was I was in the process disintermediating my account executive to the point where I was conditioning the sales, the customer to deal with me because I was the decision maker or I was the key influencer, right? And that was horrendous. I created a rod for my own back. So I had to learn the hard way that, you know what, it's okay for people to fall over. It's okay to fail, quote unquote fail, right? Because it's a matter of interpretation. But it was the lesson that came out of that, not only for the account executive, but certainly for me as a leader, that held me in great stead because I was preparing myself for even bigger challenges to come.
I love this use of the word fail. Fail is the first attempt in learning. And how do you actually add value? I ask this a lot in some of my posts. How do you really add value to a sale? how do you really add value to a rep? Like really add value.
Mm.
How are you really going to drive and make this person learn as you're going, but then, understand that, the focus on Sales Director Central is understand the customer better.
Yeah.
If you understand the customer more than you understand your product, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
If you continue to talk about your product and your company and your price as a lever, then you're
Who
always
cares?
going to get, yeah, right. You're going to get the result you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think from again, from a leader perspective, there's a show called Ted Lasso, which is gaining a fair bit of popularity. I'm not sure if you've heard it or not.
Yeah.
But it completely selfless, right? He
Yeah.
gave everyone a book, but the book was a meaningful book for everyone to read and to get some lessons out of. So you might listen to this and think, okay, I'm going to go and buy a book for my team, and that may well be good for them, right? But
Yep.
Again, understand where they're at. How do I help? What is the next process? What does this bit look like? I remember a story, crikey, this is 20 years ago, I reckon. Scotty came into my office and he said, it's a 28th, was a leap year, 2000, it was 28th of February. He says, I don't think they're going to buy. We need to discount it by 30%. And I said, here's an example of he could have done the easy path or the hard path.
Yeah.
And I said, Scotty, have you sent them an email saying, here's our value proposition? And he said, no, I haven't. I said, fantastic, mate. Let's put an email together. It took him 45 minutes. It was painfully agonizing for him to come up with 3 central points. And I've written you a 10-page letter because I didn't have time for 1 page. Make it succinct and drive it.
Yeah.
And we actually sent it to the thing. So the choice was, and 2020 hindsight is fantastic, give them a 30% discount because we're not sure whether we're going to win it, or go back with a value proposition. So we erred on the side of the value prop. And the next day we got the order. And then when we're doing a review on that deal, he went and had a chat. This guy's name was Elvis. When we had a chat with Elvis on this particular deal, he said, my KPI said I had to buy it by the end of February.
Wow.
So he was always driven to make the decision.
Yeah.
And he would have happily taken the 30% discount.
Yes.
But again, the pain of going through and saying, hey, mate, if we don't understand our value proposition, how do we hope that they understand it? And again, turns out well in the end. It's a feel-good story from that perspective. But again, if we don't understand their value, if we understand really the things that we're doing to help a customer make a buying decision. And one of the things that we talk about in our business is we help sell a complex product to an infrequent buyer. And if most of the people on this call think about, if you're telling the finance function, IT function, HR, procurement, legal, like all of these cost centers, they're just not used to buying all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you help them with the buying process?
You need to understand them. You need to understand what their internal KPIs are, because obviously Elvis having a KPI to spend or to place an order by the end of February, I'll be interested to see whether there was any KPIs around a price point he needed to buy at, but it could have been easy for Scotty to say, well, hey, I'll give you a 30% discount if you can sign by the 28th of, or close the business 28th of February. Elvis is sitting there thinking, how good's this? I've met my KPI, plus I've delivered a discount to the business. How good's this, right?
I want to say Elvis was paid some chunk of money as a bonus. So he was actually financially rewarded for making a decision. There was no driver from a price perspective. And I guess the thing for me was when I asked Scotty to then do a review for the business, that's when he rang and found out about the bonus from the buyer. He did 3 or 4 slides, and we're going to show this to the whole business. Hey, we just got this deal across the line. How exciting was it? Back in the day when you could transfer your mobile number from one carrier to the next, they were one of the first people who did that.
Okay.
And Scotty said, he showed me the presentation. We got an all hands meeting. We got 50 odd people in the business. We're going to show this thing to tomorrow. And he said, I flashed my pearly whites. That was the reason that they bought. And I'm like, mate, that is shit. Seriously. I mean, he's got a great set of choppers, right? Scotty's got a lovely set of but we need to get a bit of substance to that. And he went back and asked the question, and he came back and said, I was motivated to buy. The reasons I bought were these. Your email absolutely aligned with where I was thinking in terms of the stuff and the reasons we wanted to buy from.
Yeah.
So it was a lovely process, like I said, to get through. But again, really good learning for Scotty. Like, if we don't know our value propositions during deals, what do we do? Like, seriously, have they got a proposal? No one buys because you send a proposal. No one.
No. And nobody buys because you've got the best product either.
No one's guys because you got the best product. I was running a session with a newish client, and we're doing a bit of a preview. She's about to hire a salesperson. And she turned to me and she said, JD, I've got the best product in the marketplace. And she saw the smile come on my face. And she says, yeah, I know everybody says that, but we really do.
We do.
It's everyone's got the best product in the market. Everyone's got the best people in the market.
That's it.
The question is, and I reference the video environment, right? If people on the call remember Beta and VHS, VHS won the war, but Beta won every single review done. Mm-hmm. Every single review they would win based on features and functions. Totally. But they didn't get the video stores. They didn't get the market, and they didn't understand what that lever was in their business. There's lots of examples where the best product doesn't win. So why do we focus so much on it, Darren? It just baffles me. They love our software, they love our price. Okay, who cares? Seriously.
Well, I think my personal view is, having been in big corporates and on the I guess the vendor side in selling stuff, but now working with organizations and sales leaders is, and I say this respectfully, I think we tend to drink our own Kool-Aid, right? We tend to believe our own rhetoric that we talk to ourselves, and we almost convince ourselves that we have the greatest product or the greatest service or the greatest approach. None of it matters, because if there isn't a problem that needs to be solved, then who cares? You're just talking to somebody, trying to convince somebody that you've got the best product. Unless there's a problem, it's worthless.
If we were to unpack that for a second, though, do you need to believe in your product? 100%. You need to be authentic and believe in what it is that you're doing. Does best product win? No. The best product does not win.
No.
The battle. Like, I can't tell you. We used to sell, crikey, back in the day, I used to sell, and I hope they don't mind me saying this, it was an ugly SCO Unix green screen product. My competitors were all GUI and Windows, right? If you understand that. So this thing looked clunky and ugly. We did 8 demos for 7 deals in that organization.
Wow.
And so people would say, hey, we've got training new staff, and we'd say, fantastic, how many invoices do you need to do a day? And I think the number might be wrong, but I think it was like 400. So do you want people playing games all day or doing invoices? Oh, we want them doing invoices. And then great. And then back in the day, there used to be a thing called general protection faults in Windows. And so everyone who had Windows had a GPF happen once or twice a day. And I said, have you had a GPF today? Yeah. I said, well, how many invoices do you reckon you could get out while the thing was rebooting? And so again, business drivers simplify the process, and we won because we understand the customer really well. We knew the things that drove them, and we weren't doing the beauty pageant, beauty pageant of, let me show you the best product we've got.
No. And it delivered the result, because at the end of the day, the customers got the solution. They could get their invoices out, and they're more productive.
And not only could they get the invoices out, but they could see the gross profit on it. And it was a machine. And, once we train your guys up, like I said, back in the day, I used to say, have you seen that Minesweeper game? It's a cracker. Again, you'd lay these little things with them saying, you want them really to have access to some of the stuff. Understand your customer. But if you understand your customer better than anyone else, you'll probably win the business. If you understand the customer and they've got a problem they can't solve, which is a priority for the business, you'll win the business. Like this, it's as easy as that.
100%.
So from a leadership perspective, how do you enable that within your team?
Which it means as a sales leader, we've got to spend more time investing in our team to get them to do more analysis on their customers, to build those relationships and understand and look, everybody today can go and do Google searches, right? You can go on LinkedIn, and there's all this information that's readily available. We often talk though about what's the information under the surface. What's the information you can go and find out about somebody that nobody else can actually find out, or it's not readily at your fingertips. And if you can bring that sort of an insight to a customer, then all of a sudden they see, well, there's something different about JD, and they start to lean forward. So you've started to differentiate yourself against your competition. Then you've got a product or a value proposition, then there's a more up an opportunity for them to lean forward and maybe want to listen about that. And you could get to a piece of business being closed. So there's so much information available.
We wrap it up and say, you don't have to be an expert on their business. I think that's a common myth, that you need to understand manufacturing or banking or whatever the industry they're in. You don't. You need to understand their problem better than they do.
Yeah.
And if you can understand the problem and ask what we call insightful questions, a question which makes them think about or change the way they think about their problem, not your solution, you'll become the thought leader.
Yeah. And it's a great point, because I always thought, and I've got mentors that I've been working with that also say a very similar thing, that if you can identify a problem first of all, and then be able to articulate that problem in such a way that the potential customer can't articulate it as well as you do, they're going to attribute you as potentially having the solution.
Right.
But we don't just give that solution to them; they have to earn the solution.
Right.
So we've got to really get down and dirty and deep into what that problem is, but also what are the consequences of that problem? What if they don't solve it?
Right.
So absolutely. So let's segue into it's a perfect, I guess, jump into Sales Director Central, and I'll be really curious to understand, was there a defining moment, if you like, where you thought, you know what, there's this definite need in the marketplace that we need to help change the way the world sees sales, that led to Sales Director Central being formed?
No, it's thank you for the question. What we saw in the marketplace was too many people from a small business perspective investing a lot of time and effort getting the best product in the marketplace, and just not getting the return they wanted on it. And we also see lots of sales leaders that just didn't have the right framework and approach to selling it. And our purpose, and you've alluded to it a little bit, our purpose is to create a better future by changing the way the world views sales.
Yep.
From a sales leadership perspective, there's just too many people by osmosis who have got to the role they've got, and leadership is the good and bad behaviours that they've learned. So the reason we did it was, and it's proven in some of the success we've had, is that there's a real lack of leadership in the smaller end of town, and even the bigger end of town. There's some very good practitioners, but pure leadership is the need to bolster that up and create a better team, create a better future, create a better group of individuals. So, and we didn't also want to lose sales leaders in our business. So we have 12 mentors in our organization. We didn't want to lose people, my partner says, to a farm or to a cafe. Like all of that in IT specifically, when you turn 50, there's a use by date, which is kind of just bizarre.
Yeah.
But what we see is there's a lot of value in working with and helping teams out. We're changing the way our customers not only view sales, but we're changing their destiny. And so we are become the missing link a lot in the customers that we're doing work with. And we're very privileged and lucky to be in the positions we're in. But I spoke to a client this morning, and he said, I wouldn't have had the growth I've had in the last 4 years if I hadn't engaged with you and Sales Director Central, which is again a lovely thing to hear.
Oh, absolutely. And there's probably people listening to this right now thinking, well, that all sounds well and good, but how does that actually work? How can you effectively change the destiny of a small business or a medium enterprise, or in some cases a large enterprise, by fundamentally changing their approach to either to selling or certainly to leadership? So is there like a, I'm not going to say give the secret sauce away, but is there like a blueprint or a method that we use that enables them to do that?
There is, and I'm going to give the secret sauce away.
Hang on, I'll just press Pause.
Yeah, exactly. The we talked about it today, and we made the offer on the post I did with being a bad sales leader. We believe there's 6 pillars to creating a peak performing team or for sales leadership. And the elements of that, and happy to send something out to people who respond to this podcast,
Yep.
Is planning, accountability, methodology, indicators, cadence, and execution. If you implement that in a business, you will sell more. We absolutely guarantee it. In the absence of those things, you'll do what you're doing at the moment, but it's not going to be as scalable, because if Frank gets it, Mary may not, or Tom may not, or whatever that piece looks like. So yes, we put in a framework which we're putting on the bash bites on our website with super experienced sales leaders, and we work with sales leaders or work through them, and or we assume the role in smaller businesses. So it's a good time to come in. You know, some businesses we work a day a month. And we've got one, and I know you know this story, but we've got one client. We've spent 18 months doing a day a month. We've doubled their revenue in the first year, and we doubled the revenue in the last year, and we're going to double the revenue again this financial year. So meaningful outcomes. And more importantly, they're not wasting time on stuff that the people are just never good. Their processes, how they qualify, how they view sales is dramatically changed, which again comes back to our purpose.
And the great thing about that, JD, is that you can see in those businesses, in that one particular, a level of consistency. So they've discovered what moves the dial, and they've said, right, we need to focus more attention on that, because that's what's going to deliver the result. All the other stuff becomes noise. So,
and Darren, if you ever said to me, I ran a planning session with the 2 key guys in that business. At the end of the planning session, my partner rang him and said, "How was it?" And he just said, "You guys have just blown my mind." I never thought that I'd get that result from a planning session. I would never say hand on heart, I'm going to run a planning session that's going to blow your mind, because authentically, I'm not sure we're going to deliver that. For them, in their circumstances, with the context of their business and where they're at, fundamentally, we said, guys, you've got a 6-month sales cycle. If you don't know about the opportunity now for the rest of this quarter, then let's stop wasting time on marketing right now for this quarter, because we probably won't find that person who's done. But let's get some execution happening, and it really did. You know, like I said, got them across the line and enabled that process. So, and the really nice thing is, you know, what do you guys sell? I think the answer is confidence. We sell confidence for a business owner not to do what they would have done. Let me show you again how the thing works. Let me talk to you about a discount. We give them the confidence to say, hey, we understand you, we get where you're at, and this is what you need to do in order to solve that problem.
Absolutely. And there's a method to it that is, and the beautiful thing about that is it's a method that's consistent. It's a method that is replicable, and it's a method that delivers sustainability. Because what does most businesses lack right now? They lack sustainability, because it's all right. We're back to square zero. Now, look, every sales team has this and understands this, that every quarter, every year, every month, we start back at zero. But to have the thought process and the understanding that we've got a method here, we've got a process we follow, that gives us confidence that, you know what, we'll get taken care of. It's all good.
One of the things that we say is, if you can sell it, we can scale it. So again, with the framework, it enables you to then put maybe a leader in after we talk about accounts graduating, customers graduating. Once they've graduated, we don't want to be there necessarily forever. I mean, my longest client is 5 years. And again, huge growth. You know, when we first introduced him to the methodology, I remember him having a conversation with me saying, I can't ask these questions. I heard him do a deal review a month ago, and he's all over it. Like it was like, where was that guy 4 years ago when we were trying to put this in place? And again, huge growth, huge ability to do it. So getting back to the 6 pillars, if people did want to find out about that, please, like I said, hit up the podcast, talk to you about it. We'll get some examples of them out to them.
So with that, JD, as we wrap up the conversation today, if people want to know more about Sales Director Central, or if they want to connect with you, JD, so where's the best place they can go? Because I reckon we can put something on. We'll certainly put stuff on the show notes.
Yep.
But if they want access to the 6 pillars, for example, is there a website? Is there an email they can go to? What's the best place to get it?
Sure. So there's a couple of places of source of information. One is the website, which is just salesdirectorcentral.com. If you add JD at the front of that, that's my email.
Yep.
So they can certainly hit me up there. On the website, the 6 pillars are there, but if they want to hit me up, we'll get the 6 pillars and a little bit more structure behind what that looks like for them. And on LinkedIn, as you alluded at the beginning, said, don't call me John Dean. You started off with, hello, John Dean. John Dean is my real name. And
only your mother calls you that.
Only my mother calls me John, pretty much, or when I'm in trouble. We got lots of social proof with our business. We're super lucky. The website's got stories. There's 190 recommendations, or what I call proof of performance statements, on LinkedIn. And the other thing, the last bit is I post, as you know, 3 times a week. So if people want to look at all my posts, we give all our IP away. And I would promote that for people out there as well.
Yep.
We give all our IP away, because there's no point in holding it close. And if you're not helping anybody, we want to help people, because we also realize that it's the execution bit. It's not the idea. You can buy 100 books on sales. It's how you execute. Knowledge is great, but execution gets traction.
100%. 100%.
Plus, it's all about how you execute. And in fact, my last offer would be, if someone on this call wanted to have a chat with me and was happy to do a recommendation, I'd be happy to give them half an hour of my time for free.
Cool. And access to at the JD at salesdirectorcentral.com.
JD at Sales Director Central, or hit me up on the LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect. Or guys, if you want to also reach out to me, and I'll pass JD's details on as well. So full disclosure, I have come on board as a mentor with Sales Director Central, and really privileged to be in that position. And because I think we're aligned in terms of what we believe about sales and sales leadership, JD. So, mate, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much for giving up some time to share with us today. And as we wrap up, would there be one, if you were talking to JD of let's just say vintage 1995, would there be any advice that you'd give to JD in 1995 that you wish you knew back then that you know now?
Don't buy that house. If there's one thing from a leader perspective that I would say right now, so I'm not going to answer your question, I'm going to do it in a different way.
Sure.
Get a methodology, get a sales methodology, and implement it ruthlessly in your business. You'll sell more straight out. It's as simple as that. I can't tell you the amount of businesses that we talk to, even bigger corporates, that kind of have something, but it's on a flag. It's just kind of, we've got Medic or Taz or Miller Hyman or Sandler. We've got this thing, but they're not using it. If you rigorously use a methodology, you'll understand your customer more. If you understand the customer more, you'll sell more. So that's probably my one thing, would be to embrace a methodology quicker. And probably the other thing you said, get a coach earlier. If I had a coach earlier in my career, I would have a bigger house right now.
Yeah, I think we can all say that.
I just would have made more money. Yeah. So doesn't matter how good you are. Every top 100 tennis player, every top 100 golf player, every top 100, name the sport, they've all got a sway of people that follow them around, and they lean on them. I love those guys. I don't need a coach. I'm into this is my second sales job. Really? Yeah.
Well, if you take that and put it into the business context, if you look at most highly successful business people, right, they may not necessarily advertise it, but they've all got coaches, they've all got mentors. I probably have 3 or 4 conversations each month, some structured, others unstructured, with mentors. And I spoke to you about podcasts. Yeah. I'm continually looking to grow and expand my ideas on whatever that thing is that helps you get the business. So, and to your point on the Sales Director Central stuff, we're privileged to have you. So I appreciate you signing up and coming on board as well. It's awesome. We got a cracking team
I'm very humbled by the people that have signed up with us. So thank you for doing it.
Awesome, mate. And hey, and if people want to find more information, again, as a reminder, all of JD's information will be on the show notes. And we'll also make sure when this episode is up and ready to roll, it'll be on LinkedIn and tagged as well. So, JD, once again, thanks so much for jumping on the podcast. It's been a phenomenal conversation. And hey, we're going to have to do this again at some stage.
It sounds good, mate. There's so much to talk about. Thanks.
Absolutely. Good on you, mate.
Cheers.
Cheers.